Hello and welcome to part 2 of our episodes covering the Rocky franchise. Last week we did Rocky up until Rocky 5. This week we are going to look at Rocky Balboa and Creed, as well as Creed 2. We're pretty much picking up exactly where the last episode left off. So if you haven't listened to that one already, you might want to. Head over to dimreturns.com where you can find all our past episodes. Obviously, this episode contains spoilers for Rocky Balboa and Creed. Less obviously, it also contains some pretty major spoilers for Million Dollar Baby. So if you haven't seen that film and you care about what happens at the end, you might want to skip ahead a few minutes once we mention its title. Other than that, all good. Now here you go. Go the distance.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Diminishing Returns. Actually, this is part 2 of our Rocky analysis, so really we should just take out the 10 minutes of the last episode and drop them in here. That would be the appropriate thing to do, wouldn't it? Anyway, my name is Alan Turing, and with me, as always, is Sol Harris.
Let's get ready to podcast!
That's copyrighted, we're going to have to pay for that.
Isn't that guy like top billed in one of these films? I'm sure he's like really high up the credits.
That's because that's what you need to do to get him. Also with us, as last week, is Judy Bignell.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome back. We are
Thanks.
So last week, if you haven't listened to it, we discussed the first 5 Rocky films, that kind of original franchise. And today we're going into the later films. So if you want to go back and listen to that one first, that probably makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, we're starting today with Rocky Balboa.
Rocky 6. Adrian's Revenge.
Yes, this is the one where Adrian comes back from the dead and becomes a zombie and eats Rocky's brain and starves to death. Okay, so this was a film that came about 16 years after the franchise had been put to bed, 30 years after the original film came out. We've got an actor who's far too old to be doing what they're doing. And so they write a script about a fighter who is just too old and somehow managed to make it work.
We should add that Rocky V was very much the finale of the franchise. Obviously, we covered this last week, but it was written as that's the end.
Even the bloody end credits implied it was the end.
And they didn't close it off completely. They obviously did leave the door quite open.
They should have done.
But yeah, this was very much... I'd say it was kind of the start of the modern wave of Hollywood sequel-making attitude, really. Because now it's par for the course. You dust off a franchise that hasn't had a film in 20 years, 30 years, and you make a sequel, and it's not really seen as that weird a thing to do anymore. But I feel like this was on the start of that wave.
Yeah, but do people kind of make a sequel, or do they kind of make a reboot? And, I don't know that there's that many that have the original cast coming back, do they? I mean, other than, obviously you've got Blade Runner. But...
Yeah, like Blade Runner this year. Trainspotting 2. Indiana Jones 5's in production. The Star Wars.
Oh, shit. What? No, Indiana Jones.
Pre-production. Hey, I'm all for it. I mean, we'll get to this at a later time.
No.
I'm all for it.
No.
Come on,
so, bad man.
Right, really
4?
quickly.
What was 4?
Yeah, Indiana Jones
Shite.
is the anti-Star Trek, by which I mean the odd-numbered ones are good, the even-numbered ones are shite. So, Indiana Jones...
2 wasn't bad.
Oh, it was awful. Raiders of the Lost Ark,
4
amazing.
was awful.
Temple of Doom,
No.
awful.
No.
Holy Grail, fantastic. Number 4,
Holy
awful.
Grail? Do you mean Last Crusade? Last Crusade is by far the best one.
So anyway, Adrian's dead.
Yeah, Adrian, I mean, what is that all about?
Do you want to know? Because I looked into this. I was intrigued to see what... I suspected it was a plot-driven decision, and apparently it was. It wasn't like Talia Shire. It wasn't like she was asking for too much money or anything.
But it's not. I mean, it's so un-Rocky-esque, which is like the deaths are all motivating. You've got to see it happen. You've got to see him go through the saga. You've got to see him bounce back. And instead, well, yeah, but you never see the journey. So it just is like, boom, she's dead.
It's because they wanted to pick up with Rocky at like this low point. His life's not good, basically. That's something, actually, on the rewatch. When I watched this when it came out in 2006, whenever it was, and my 16-year-old self was like, oh, he's got a restaurant, like the real Sylvester Stallone. He's doing all right for himself. And I watched it again, like, now, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, he's got a restaurant, but it's like, it's probably only just making enough money to get, like, it's not a glamorous,
No, I mean, there's not really a kitchen, is there?
Plus, he's it's not just that he owns it and he's taking some money off the top. Like, he's there every day.
Yeah,
he's being a draw, and so it's obviously a job for him.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like you say, it's probably. He seems like he's surviving. He's not. He doesn't seem to have money trouble in the sense of paying the rent and everything. But that's about it, isn't it? But he also seems fairly happy. He seems kind of content, and to the point where, obviously his wife's dead and all that, and that's his sort of hole in his life. But his discontentment comes from, I want to fight. Yeah, I want to feel like a human again. I want to feel like when I was alive by being punched. Self-harm.
Yeah. It's like Fight Club, isn't it?
Yeah, and once again, they don't really know what to do with Paulie, so they just have him get in the way for a while, and then he gets fired so that they can go, oh, he'll just be on my team, Paulie. So what's the narrative behind all this? What's the drive behind it all? It's mostly to do with his relationship with his son again?
No, it's not, though. It's not in the same way that 5 was.
There's a lot of it in there, though.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a drive. I think it's like the emotional bit is the emotional connection. But the drive really comes from him being like, I'm going to prove that I've still got something to prove.
But I think the fact that his son
to me
doesn't seem to think that he has all that much to offer is a big part of that. I think the way
he doesn't do it to prove his son wrong. He does it, and then his son tells him to stop, and he's like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. I don't feel like it's proving a point to the son.
I know, but I think if he and his son had a really close, warm relationship and he went out fishing with his son every weekend, and like if he didn't have this sense of distance there, I don't think he would have necessarily felt the urge to
he
go
probably
out and
wouldn't.
fight. I think they had to kind of...
Yeah, I think there'd be less of a hole in his life.
Yeah. The same way if Adrian was still alive, I don't think he'd be that bothered about it. Or at least if he was, she'd be like telling him, don't you fight again. And they'd have to
saw that 5 films in a row, didn't we?
Yeah.
Plus, did you get the impression that Rocky Jr. is a bit of a dick?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he's a nice guy and Rocky hasn't given him the attention he needs or anything like that.
Not this
It just seems like he's a spoiled dick, really, isn't
Yeah,
he?
he doesn't come
off
off well in this film.
You have to do things to make me feel good.
To say he came off as quite a well-developed character for a child in Rocky V. He
lost
just
it now.
Not likeable at all in this film.
I think it's because, he says, like, do me a favour and, don't do this because I'm living in your shadow. But at the same time, that would make sense if Rocky was an asshole about it, but he's so humble and he tries not to get in the way. Yeah. And it's like, he's definitely painted as a nice guy. So why is the kid throwing his toys out the pram?
As we do see in Creed, we'll get to that later. If he was trying to be a boxer and he was like, oh no, I want to make it on my own instead of like being in my... Like that might... Well, he's not. He's like he's working in the city or something, isn't he? It's like...
Yeah.
At the most, you're going to go, oh, you're Rocky's son. Oh.
Yeah.
That's pretty much as far as I would get with that conversation. But by the way, when we were talking about Rocky 5, we were sort of praising Sage Stallone for that performance. We said he was pretty good and that he hadn't really done much acting. We did fail to mention that he was dead.
Hang on. Is he?
We didn't, yeah.
What?
Is that why he doesn't come back for this one?
Well, no, because he died in 2012, something like that. So no, it wasn't. What? That wasn't the reason he didn't come back.
I had no idea he was dead.
I had no idea he was dead.
Well, I didn't until I was looking at film. Well, it says he dies of arteriosclerosis, which is like heart failure. Well, like when your arteries fill up with gunk or whatever. Which is like, a lot of people die of that, but he was 34. So, not quite sure what that is.
36.
Oh yeah, 36. So he wasn't old enough for that really to... So I'm not sure what the situation was. It's a weird thing to die of so young. Especially when like it's not in the family. It doesn't appear to run in the family.
I mean, Rocky himself, Stallone, doesn't look like a healthy man in this film, does he?
Yeah, but I was looking this up earlier actually, because Rocky's dad died at age like 91. Not Rocky's dad, Sylvester Stallone's dad.
I was going to say, like,
Sylvester Stallone's dad died at like 91. Jackie Stallone, she's still
going
alive.
strong.
She's 96.
Yeah.
So, genes are good.
Bracky.
Yeah.
So Stallone didn't really age all that much between Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No, well, that's because they were such quick succession, weren't they, really?
Well, were they? Like,
14 years between them.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's enough
Yeah,
time.
but as in, you see a gradual progression because there's 5 films spread out over that time.
No, but even if you
this is a jump.
Even if you go from the first one to the 5th one, he's not really aged that much. But then,
no, maybe not.
But then you jump forward to Rocky Balboa.
Plastic surgery found him.
Fuck me, he's like a...
Oh, he looks absolutely dreadful. I kept saying it out loud.
He's like he's been made out of plasticine. He looks like a fucking Aardman character.
He's much bulkier. Yeah, he's definitely a bulkier frame.
Looks like Stretch Armstrong.
He's lost his shape. His voice is deeper, and literally, it looks like like 5 facelifts all botched together.
I mean, he looks, and I mean, this is the most damning. He looks like Jackie Stallone.
Yeah,
awful. It's so distracting.
It is really distracting.
Well, I mean, not to get ahead of it, but he looks a hell of a lot better now.
A lot better in 7.
Yeah, and so having seen what he looks like nowadays and going back to that was what was really jarring.
It's really weird, and his hair's still like dark, and he looks like like someone's melted the face of a Ken doll. Yeah.
And now he looks like a man who's aging quite gracefully. He's kind of come out the other side of it, but he's back then. Anyway, so it's good how that incurable brain damage was. He got over
curable.
That happens, though. Just grows back.
Yep. I know there's some in-universe explanation that isn't like gone into in much detail in the films where. Like the first opinion was wrong, and he never went to get a second opinion.
And technology has improved. And
Rocky 1 to 5, they feel very much cut from the same cloth. They feel very of a time. This is the first film that feels like filmmaking techniques and attitudes and methodologies moved on. It's the first one that feels. I mean, I won't exactly say modern because I think it's already very dated, but
no, I agree.
It feels jarringly different tonally.
It really does. Like even in terms of the cinematography, like the camera quality, the color palette, everything, it feels shiny. Yeah,
has a kind of digital feel about it. Probably wasn't shot digitally, but it has a different feel to it, and I don't like it. And it's not the film's fault. I guess it had to move with the times, but. As I say, it's jarring how dated it feels already, 12 years since it came out.
It's definitely emulating the first couple of films rather than the 80s ones. It's it's trying to get back to that kind of dirty, gritty look. I think it does that pretty well. It feels the same sort of tone as those early films.
I don't think it does at all. I think it feels very modern and of a different era. Which it is. Yeah, clean, exactly. It feels like it's, what filmmaking was doing in the noughties, basically.
It feels like the difference to me between watching a VHS and watching a DVD.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. There's like a sheen on everything, and there's not like a hazy grittiness to it. It's.
Well, then the other sort of obviously there's a fight that they're building up to, but the other main storyline is to do with a woman in the neighborhood who he bumps into.
Yeah.
Who he knew as a child.
We saw her in Rocky.
Yeah, which is.
An odd choice.
It's a weird tie-in. It's a strange choice to get an actor who looks nothing like the previous one at all. If you're going to tie it in, why not just make it he meets someone and...
I don't know, she looks about as similar as Sylvester Stallone does compared to his old self, so I think it worked.
But what's strangest about this is that it's obviously they kind of deliberately and they go out of their way to kind of make it not a romantic thing. And I think that's wise, but if you haven't got the drive of that, why does he pick this person to kind of just go, oh, I'm going to kind of like just befriend you?
And also befriend her son.
Yeah, and then when
Because he always had that relationship with her, even though he hasn't seen her in 30 years or however long it's been.
Well, if I could believe that, but the only reference they ever make to their previous knowledge of each other is that one scene that we see in Rocky. They never go, oh, remember when we used to play stickball in the park and everything? It was like, oh, remember that one conversation we had? And so it was a bit too on the nose, where like, if it could have just been, oh yeah, so and so from the old neighborhood, right? Yeah, I remember you. and then we have a conversation, and I buy into this that he just cares about for some reason.
Well, I wonder if it was meant to be a maybe dating thing, because it all seemed very platonic and fair enough until he said about, do you want to go dancing, and then you can hit me with a bus. And I was like, I think this is meant to be that maybe he's realising he has to move on and take a chance, and it just felt a bit like they were flirting with the idea of a dating thing at that point.
It doesn't. It's not something that feels 100% platonic to me. I know Alan said they've kind of
like 90%.
That's it. The only reason I wouldn't have said it if they hadn't sort of specifically gone out of his way to say it, literally. And then at the end of the film, he's sat there with his dead wife again. So it's not like he does move on by the end.
But she comes to the fight, and it's like, it feels a bit like maybe she's meant to be his date.
But that's it. I think they want it to be a romantic entanglement. They've written it as that. But then it's just like, oh, well, we can't just sort of slag off Adrian. Right. We've built her up too much, so we have to kind of not do that. And then, whenever I meet a woman and then I ask if I can spend time alone with her children, it makes me look weird. But apparently with Rocky, it's fine. So, he takes this young lad under his wing.
Oh, sorry. Can we just... Steps. Can we just address the shit name, please? It's short for Stevenson. No, it's not. That would be Stephen.
Yeah, but Steps is the sort of shit name as Street.
Or Steve.
Or Vinny. Yeah, not Steps.
It can't be called Steve
or
when
Steve.
you're on the streets of Philadelphia. Like trying to.
It can be Steve.
Vinny.
Steve.
Steps.
Stew. No, Steps. He would be called Steph.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Now, one of the first things he does with this young boy that he decides to spend time with, they go to a dog shelter and he adopts a dog.
Yeah, what the hell is that?
Now this dog, now you'll see he's quite old and looks battered and like used up, but he's still a good dog. I think if you look closely, you may see a double meaning there. It's very subtle, but if you may get it.
That dog is quite a good dog, unlike Butkus, who's one of those like fucking ugly, horrible.
But ugly.
Yeah. So his tastes improved in dogs. And with his son again, like the message there is basically like he reconciles with his kid ultimately because he's good at punching, and his kid's like respects that.
Suddenly proud of him.
No, to be fair, what I liked about that bit was that the kid was being a dick, and I thought this guy's a dick. But then when they have their little confrontation and discuss it, Rocky actually sort of says, "Look, you're being a dick. Stop being a dick." And the kid sort of takes it on board, and obviously it's a little bit more in depth than that. But the kid basically goes, "Oh, do you know what? I am being unreasonable."
That's why I keep calling you a piece of shit these days, Alan. I keep going, Alan, you're a real piece of shit.
Until I realise.
So that you'll go, oh yeah, I am a piece of shit, yeah.
And then what? What's the end game?
You might buy some curtains and change.
Yeah.
But then it is kind of wrapped up in that one conversation, and then they're immediately perfectly happy again. So again, not a very well developed storyline.
Well, if we're complaining about writing here, I've written down, I've made a few notes of quotes that leapt out at me. He owns a little restaurant in South Philly. What's the special? Pounded chicken?
Oh yeah.
Good joke.
Because you see, he was well known for being a chicken and running away. Oh no, wait, he's not that at all. So it doesn't make any sense. Pounded meathead would have been better.
Balboasaurus?
That means he's old. You see?
That's a quote.
Get it?
Someone calls him a Balboasaurus. I feel like I've been very down on this film so far.
Yeah.
Because it's shit.
And I feel like I'm going to have to jump in and defend it, because it sounds like you guys don't like it very much, but I think it's alright.
I thought it was alright, to be honest with you. Yeah,
Why?
I'm slagging it off because it's funny, but...
There's a lot of...
What? How can you slag off 3 and like this one?
Because 3's a load of shit.
It's better than this.
It's really not. It's
but this is much more my style of film, like low down and kind of small character scale stuff.
I remember when this film came out and it was like hailed as an absolute triumph and it's magnificent, blah blah blah, and it's not that good, but I think it is very, very solidly and without any real competition the best of the sequels to the original Rocky up until this point. It's got flaws, absolutely, and it's a bit awkward and old, and but there's this kind of overriding sense that it has that feeling of a cheap latter-day sequel that kind of makes it almost feel like it's not a real film in its own right. It's kind of, which I guess is sort of true, it's kind of living off the legacy of the original, but I think it does a very good job of that, all things considered. You know, I think it works. It gets back to that kind of character-driven stuff the first film did well. It's... And you know what? I think given how absurdly ludicrous a plot it is, the idea that this old man is going to get back in the ring and fight a young, in-shape boxer, I think it does a remarkable job of making that work. And it's like it knows how ridiculous it is, and it still kind of has its cake and eats it. It gets away with it. For anyone who hasn't seen it, the plot is essentially that. Rocky, the old heavyweight champion... there's like some weird sports show that broadcasts a simulated, computer emulated fight between Rocky and the current, like Rocky in his prime versus the current heavyweight champion, like using the statistics and what have you to see who would win, and that gets people talking, and the new heavyweight guys, you know, slagging him off and stuff, and it ends up Rocky's called back into the ring to have a kind of fun battle with this guy.
That's it. It's supposed to be an exhibition match, and it's like, oh, we'll sell a lot of tickets, and you know, we'll make some money.
And it was inspired, Alan. I'm sure you're aware, but it was inspired by a real fight. It was it George Foreman, I believe?
Well, George Foreman came out of retirement numerous times, and yeah, when he was in his 50s even, he was still fighting.
And there was one fight in particular, I believe, where he went up against a guy and was doing very badly, and it looked like it was an absolute walkover, and then he knocked the guy out in one of the latter rounds, and it was like a big KO'd him and won. That's
what they call a puncher's chance. It's like, you know, if you're a hard puncher, there's always a chance you just catch someone right and knock them out, and you can win any fight because you just need to get that one blow.
It was inspired by the George Foreman Michael Moorer fight of 1994, if that means anything to you. George Foreman came out of retirement. He was 45 years old, challenging a 26-year-old heavyweight champion, and it lasted 9 rounds where Foreman was getting very clearly outboxed, but then in the 10th round, Foreman just smacked him really hard and knocked him out and won.
George Foreman's fight immediately before that, when he was on his comeback, was against Tommy Gunn from Rocky V.
Yeah, Tommy Morrison.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
that's the one I was thinking you were going to reference. The problem I have with it is that it feels like another... You know, the first 5 is kind of like, oh, we need an incentive for Rocky to fight. He's going to get back in the ring. Let's see what goads him this time. And all of the antagonists, for want of a better word, are kind of going anything to get, you know, do anything to get him in the ring.
Yeah.
This really felt like we have to roll with modern times. Let's have a computer simulated thing to get his back up, and it was like, oh, okay, that's what modern people do now, so let's make it this modern reference.
I don't think it does get Rocky's back up. Don't they basically say Rocky would win? It's kind of like he goes, cool.
But then why does he fight? Why the fuck does he go back in the ring? He has the least incentive to get in there, and he goes in anyway.
I think it's a very believable take on it. I think the idea is Rocky always wants to get back in the ring.
He just wants to fight.
The one that acknowledges that. I think the last few
he hasn't been wanting to get back in. He's been trying to take himself a bit more seriously.
The last few films, Rocky's needed an excuse to kind of justify it, but there's always been a sense of, you know, he kind of actually just wants to have this fight, and he just needs like an excuse to let himself do it and to justify it to Adrian. And that's
it. In the previous films, Rocky doesn't need an excuse. Adrian needs an excuse. So this one, she's dead and he's free to live his life how he wants.
But also, but he's not. He doesn't strike me as being restless. He doesn't strike me as being like, I just got to fight. I'm not fulfilling. He seems, like Sol said earlier, quite content, really. And then there's this image that comes out and he's like, why not? And he does it for shits and giggles. And it's like, I don't actually feel any empathy for the struggle and the journey you're going through to get back in shape, because you've literally brought this upon yourself for no reason at all.
But you're saying that like he's having to fight against adversity and struggle to get into shape. He's doing that because he enjoys it. He enjoys the struggle and going to the gym every day.
It means I don't give a crap about the end of this film. It means I don't care about his journey, and I don't care who wins this fight.
Well, that's the point. He doesn't care about who wins the fight. He assumes.
Well, then
he's
why
not
was
gonna
this
win
film
the fight.
made? Again, it's just me going, why was this film made? There's no point.
Because
to it.
it's not about who wins the fight. It's about a character study of a man who's, decides he wants to do something and gets a chance to do it.
Yeah, I think it works quite well, this film, for the most part. And, that there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of flaws. I think the training montage is incredibly weak in this one.
We've seen them all.
I was going to say, it's because in the past films you've seen, like, Stallone sprinting at insane speeds and leaving cars behind him or whatever. In this one, it's just an old man sort of jogging. It's just not
And the
impressive.
veins on his chest. Oh, my God. I look at him and I'm like, you look like you've had a battering ram go into your chest.
Yeah. But, they get to the fight, and I think it's a legitimately really tense, good fight. I'm invested in the boxing match, just the same way I am in all the others. I think it does a good job of investing you in the underdog, Rocky, and it's kind of absurd that he'd even stand a chance, but I think they do a good job of selling it.
And also, Rocky isn't winning. Like, he's not doing well, and then he miraculously is like,
that's his style.
He has a flash of Adrian.
It does annoy me that he only wins because he suddenly remembers halfway through someone saying it's about how hard you can get hit, and that makes him able to withstand punches better because he remembers they've said that.
No, he remembers himself saying that. He said that. That's it, a flashback of himself.
It's what he was
saying
to someone else, wasn't it?
Yeah. I liked the fight, actually. What I really liked about the fight is the way it was filmed, and it was filmed as if it was TV.
My note is I really like the fight and think it's really tense up until the point it goes black and white and turns into a montage.
Oh, it goes into...
And it goes from this feeling of real, raw boxing, where you're respecting the craftsmanship of the actors and it goes from that to just film magic, film editing techniques, and it's just kind of like, I was really invested in that, and now I don't care.
I really liked that build up to it, where it was as if you were watching on TV. All the footage we saw was cameras that were their TV cameras,
I like the song that he comes out to.
What's that music? You can't be serious.
High hopes? Talk about wishful thinking.
Well, maybe no hopes is more realistic. Anyway, the crowd likes it.
Where'd that come from?
I chose it. I love Sinatra.
He's very good, Sinatra.
Let's go.
Very good.
Yeah. They come out and they do the fight. The first couple of rounds of the fight is good. But like that, I like the way that is all shot, but it's going for realism. And the problem with that is that the fights are much more realistic. You can tell they're kind of really hitting each other and stuff, but it's also really hurts the effect of the film because you see them actually hitting each other and it's not very hard. Now, whether they're like pulling punches because they don't want to actually hurt each other, or whether Sylvester Stallone just hasn't got that power anymore. But like obviously in the previous films, they're faking it so you can look as hard as you can. But in this,
combination of
just
both,
the simple the speed of the movements and how hard they were hitting, it was just like there's nothing there. There's no real serious damage being done, and so that affected it. The fact that it was more realistic obviously made it less believable.
I think they do a good job though of like say selling the idea as ludicrous as it is. The fact that they set up this kind of realistic aesthetic, the fact that they go out of their way to set up the antagonist, the guy he's going up against, as being the kind of the hare and the tortoise and the hare. He's like I said, they go out of their way to set him up as not taking it remotely seriously.
I don't mind it as like that's the rival pairing. I think the rival pairing kind of works. The tortoise and the hare, like you said, the old and the young. And the fact that I like that they do keep it as an exhibition fight, because I really thought the twist was going to be that the younger guy was like, once he's in the ring, he just rips into him to prove a point. And then that never happened.
One thing I'm not a big fan of is it's basically the exact same ending as the first film. And I know there's not a lot
I managed to go the distance, exactly. And then the music cuts in and it's like, and then the other woman runs on stage.
Anyway, I mean, I give it a 7.
God. I gave it a 7
Senor
as well.
Siete strikes again. Nope, 5.
So harsh.
It's 5.
Poor Rocky. I mean, that is kind of the end of the pure Rocky franchise right there. That is kind of the end of it.
You could have gone from 5 to 7 without 6 really being there. It's just so lift outable.
Oh, completely. I mean, you could say, you could go from 4 to 7 or
Well, not really, because you need the story of Creed. But cheers.
Creed in
you
the
need
fifth
3.
One? He's dead by that point.
No, but, sorry. Did you say from 4 to 7? Sorry, I thought you said. I thought you said 2. I'm miles away.
But I mean, I think all that really says is that Balboa ended up being something of a blueprint for Creed. It kind of, they did quite a good job, but they decided they wanted to come back and nail it and do it properly. But before we get there, are you guys familiar with a film called Grudge Match?
No,
I don't think so.
In between Rocky Balboa and Creed, in 2013, they somehow got Sylvester Stallone and Robert De Niro to agree to a comedy in which they play aging boxers who've got a long-standing feud and agree to get back in the ring and fight each other. And, the sort of joke of it essentially being, it's Raging Bull versus Rocky, which, on paper, great.
It's a good idea. Sounds all right, actually.
Yeah. In practice, I watched this specifically for this episode. It's not good.
Is it a comedy then? Because
yeah, it's a comedy.
Because I was just looking at the director and he's done things like Get Smart, 50 First Dates, Anger Management, Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps.
Sounds about right.
So it sounds like if you've got that kind of director on board, it'll be a sort of silly comedy. Which sounds like it could be quite a decent little drama, that.
Well, it's just such a waste of talent. It's, Kevin Hart's in there as the kind of funny guy who pulls them together. And yeah, it's just not good. It's such a shame. Like, they're clearly basically playing Rocky and what's he called in Raging Bull?
Joe DiMaggio? Sorry, not Joe DiMaggio. That's the baseball player.
Yeah.
Jake LaMotta.
That's the one, yeah. They're clearly kind of playing their characters from those films, but, kind of a comedic take on them.
I do remember seeing the trailer for this because they're in like a motion capture thing, aren't they? And...
Yeah.
Hey, I hope I don't look like that big of an ass.
Set me up.
That's what you come at 1 o'clock, kid.
I want to see my old friend. He's been ducking me for 30 years. I missed him.
It don't look like you're missing any meals. I'm out of here.
No, you're not.
Not the behavior of old men.
Check out this clip that is just blowing up online.
I got a company that wants the official rematch. They're gonna pay you $100,000.
Well, I can't be in the same room as that guy. Not worth it.
The hell you mean it ain't worth it? I'm looking at your house.
Such a wasted opportunity to do something else. And you can tell the director doesn't know what to do with the sports side of it, the action, because when they do get in the ring at the end, it is depressing to watch. It's not like... It doesn't quite feel like it's being played for laughs properly, like old people having a fight. It just feels like...
Earnest.
There's a YouTube video online that I'm quite a fan of some like real old men getting in a street fight in like Italy or Spain or something, and it's so slow and painful, and they keep falling over, and it's like watching that.
What is it with you guys?
What?
I'm watching... Alan watches weird shit on YouTube as well. Like, stuff that if you plough through watching it can only be described as masochism. and now you're doing the same thing.
Oh, my
what
YouTube
is it with you guys?
I'm
finding weirdies.
I don't think anyone's YouTube history is normal, though. Like, everyone goes to weird corners and just ends up watching the weirdest, strangest things, don't they?
I bet I watch Stranger Things than you, though. Not stranger,
don't play
but
this
like,
game. Don't
more...
play this game while we're recording.
No, because I watch stuff like...
Than me or than Judy?
Oh, definitely than Judy. But, I mean, I think yours will be kind of just insanity, actual insanity. Like, your mental illness played out on camera.
Yeah, I dig up people having breakdowns on camera and laugh at them. That's kind of my
whereas mine is like watching a man eating a wartime ration from like 1942.
Oh, yeah, man. You made me watch that with you. Don't give me that.
There's a guy I got really into, and I wish I could remember his name because I can't find it anywhere. But his name was like a load of kanjis. I had to like I don't know what to type in to find it. He was this really, really like obese man. It was amazing because he'd like order huge amounts of takeaway food, and then he'd just film himself opening up the bag, taking the food out, looking at it, and going. And that was the whole video. And then he'd start eating it, go and like giggling away. And there's just hour after hour of that. It's one of my favourite guys on the internet. Anyway, it's weird shit on YouTube.
You guys deserve each other. You really do.
You know what? I'm looking at my YouTube history right now. I want to see what I've been looking at.
I mean, even Alan, this is more for you, I guess, than Sol. Even I was so bored watching Rocky Balboa. I looked up, I paused it, and I watched some hydraulic press.
Hydraulic press?
Okay. You don't know Sol until you've watched it.
Is this a video of a machine just crushing things?
It's a channel. It's a channel.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm a big fan of that.
I went back to the stack of 500 sheets of paper myself. That was my go-to today.
So wait, so that is that thing where it's just a thing, and they'll put like footballs in it, and you'll watch them get. Oh, I love that. I love
it explode. Yeah. So it was either that. Also, Alan is right. He does watch people eat wartime rations that have been like molded together, and I seem to remember.
Sorry, I've just logged in. A worrying amount of my history on here seems to be various takes on the steamed hams scene from The Simpsons. It's about 90% of my viewing history is just... God, oh my god, there's still... Fucking hell, it's all steamed hams. Steamed hams for Game Boy.
Hang on. You gotta
steamed
clear
hams,
something
but
up
it's
for me.
Nintendo 3DS.
Is steamed hams a channel, or are you literally watching videos about ham getting steamed? Like, what are you doing?
Judy, you telling me you don't know what steamed hams is?
What is this? What are you
I
doing?
love his incredulous way of asking about that. You literally don't know what steamed hams is. Like that.
Everyone knew about.
It's like saying
hams.
you've never seen Star Wars. What?
Well, is it not like that? You're a millennial.
Steamed hams.
Yeah. Fuck. It's a regional dialect.
I got no reference. Is this? Oh, this is the fucking Simpsons.
Yes.
What is it to do with the Simpsons, though?
Well, Seymour, I made it despite your directions. Ah, Superintendent Chalmers. I hope you're ready for an unforgettable luncheon. Yeah. And then, ding. Ah, oh, ye gods! My roast is ruined! But what if I were to purchase fast food and pass it off as my own cooking? Ho, 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 delightfully devilish, Seymour. Dun, dun, dun. And then there's a song, which I won't do. Skinner with his crazy explanations. The superintendent's gonna need his medication. When he hears Skinner's lame exaggerations, there'll be trouble in town tonight.
Why
Seymour!
Why is all of your history...
Seymour,
why is all
there...
of your history to do with
what?
this? You said you were scrolling down for the duration of the time that I was talking, and it was all to do with this.
Yeah.
Sol, get out. Leave the house.
People remix it and stuff. They'll like do it.
That's not an excuse.
Have you not seen
That's
it?
even
Do you not
more
know what I'm
reason to
talking
get out of the
about?
house. I did not.
When he
know
serves
what you were
Krusty
talking
Burger
about.
to
so
Superintendent Chalmers. Have you not, like, someone got Jeff Goldblum to read out the script.
Well, Seymour, I made it, despite your directions.
Ah, Superintendent Chalmers. Welcome. I hope you're prepared for an unforgettable luncheon.
Yeah.
I know, I just saw it on YouTube when I did the search, but alas, I have more to do with my time.
Well... No, because you watch videos of things being crushed by a hydraulic machine. I watch videos
no,
of...
that's different. That's during Rocky VI.
I watched the steamed ham scene, but it's been...
Yeah, but you watch it over and over again.
No, I don't. I watch it so it's been edited like a level from Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
Well, Seymour, I made it, despite your directions.
Ah, Superintendent Chalmers, welcome. I hope you're prepared for an unforgettable luncheon.
Oh, you gods! My roast is ruined! So I watch it so that, like, it's been put in alphabetical order and someone's re-edited every word so it goes like...
Albany.
Anyone?
Aurora. Borealis. Burgers. Call calves. Chalmers. Clams.
Sol, get out. Like, seriously, I stand by my previous sentence.
See, Judy, you just don't understand modern art. That's the problem.
Oh, shut up. You know how I feel about modern art.
No?
No,
Someone,
I mean, you can. You're trying to justify it, and
someone remixed
you will never reach me on this.
Someone auto-tuned it to "Feel Good Inc" by Gorillaz, and it is incredible. It's like
that's a very good song, but
Superintendent Chalmers, it's fantastic. Well, Seymour, I made it. Despite your directions, it's like the whole scene to that music. It's incredible.
That song.
Someone did it to Smash Mouth All Star, and it's the best thing I've ever seen.
Well, Seymour, I made it despite your directions. Superintendent Chalmers, welcome. I hope you're prepared for an unforgettable luncheon. Oh, guys, I'm supposed to roll it. What if I were to purchase
Alan, help me out here.
I'm at a loss.
So am I.
Well, this is like most of my YouTube anyway for the last year.
Okay, well that's why I'm judging.
Oh, and I've got acting show reel. I assume Alan sent me that to laugh at someone.
Bit of a tonal change.
Anyway,
we need to move on.
Yeah.
Creed.
So yeah, any grudge match? 5 out of 10. Creed.
Yeah. So a few years down the line. So do you know how Creed came about?
Money. Kind of inspires most things.
Yeah, pretty much. I know there was a point where Stallone was going to be directing it himself, and then obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But sort of, it seemed, from what I read, it seems like it was quite a smooth. Hey, let's make this film. That's a good idea. Let's do that kind of.
I just think it has a better solid foundation. You know, that kind of. It feels like it's moving into that next generation very deliberately.
Yeah, it makes way more sense.
Exactly. So it
capping off to the franchise than Rocky Balboa did. The idea that Stallone is going to pass the torch and train a new young buck, because that's implicitly
and someone who's worthy this time rather than Tommy Gunn.
That's implicitly the cycle of a boxer as we see him in these films. Mickey was a young scrapping boxer at some point, wasn't he? So
my main problem with this film basically was that I just never liked the main character, Adonis. He's just very he's not a nice person, he's not a likable person.
Sol, fuck's sake, we're just going to lift out your audio.
I've just found a clip of Lenny Henry doing live action Wallace and Gromit.
I've seen that one. Do you think you sent me that one?
I don't know. I really think that Adonis he's being set up as a decent guy in this film. That's the whole point.
I think that's the idea. I don't think they do a very good job of it.
Why not? He doesn't do anything like a dickheady thing to do.
He never disrespects I think he never comes across like a particularly likable man. I think he's, very selfish.
Not at all.
He's got a load of weird issues. Like he doesn't want to be in his. He doesn't want to have his dad's name involved, and he gets really hung up on that. And people.
But I feel like that's so much more understandable. He's literally. It is all about him trying to create a name on his own. That's the only reason he doesn't want the name. And also, it's a little bit embarrassing.
He's
ego, he's like a love child. Well, yeah, but also
women care about his ego being so prissy that he can't be attached to his dad's name. I don't know.
Well, fair enough. A little bit weird, but not that to that extent.
I just didn't like him. I didn't take to him as a person. I don't think he does anything particularly horrible or wrong, but I just think he's quite a sort of nasty, horrible person.
Well, I definitely didn't take to him at the beginning. I wouldn't say he's nasty, and also the comments about him being selfish. I think they do the best job they can to counter that. Like, Rocky is diagnosed with cancer. And the first thing he says is like, I'm not letting you train me while you just sit here dying. Like, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to take care of you. Like, they really set him up to try and be a decent person.
Yeah,
I don't know how you can say he's not.
Like, I think Michael B. Jordan gives a great performance. I think there's just something about him that's a bit... Like, I think he was much better
hot-headed.
Put to use as the villain in Black Panther,
Yeah, he's got a kind of nasty streak to him somehow. Yeah. I think it's just a sort of air he gives off, and it's the way he's playing it.
Yeah,
because like I say, I don't think the characteristics necessarily.
Well, I've seen him in was it Fantastic Four? I remember him being very likable in that, despite the film being dreadful. So I think it is something he's doing with his performance, absolutely. But he does come across quite, I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. But yeah, I don't think I think I warm to him as the film goes on, and you see more indication of him being a bit nicer and better. But there's just something a bit off about him. I don't know what it is.
I think at the beginning it's just that he seems like any other guy who's like, oh, I'm a fighter, and it seems a bit misdirected, and actually it's like he just wants to fight. It's not for any noble reason, and then that all goes. I do think that goes, and actually I had no issue with him as a protagonist at all.
Well, I think by the end of it, it's so clear as well that the strength of this film, the stuff I care about, it's when Sylvester Stallone's on screen. As much as he's being set up as our new protagonist who's going to carry the franchise. I mean, my thesis is I don't know how long this franchise can last without Stallone. I get the impression they're setting him up to carry on.
They're really gradually trying to wean him out, aren't they?
Yeah, and they keep kind of getting to the point where they've obviously written a draft where Stallone dies and then changed. In fact, they did it back with Rocky V, and then they changed their mind at the last minute. And I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Rocky dies in the new one. He probably won't, but I just get the impression that basically the second Rocky Stallone isn't in these films, it won't work and it won't last any longer. They'll do one film without him and it just won't do as well. And
let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I think there's a scene in this film which is a pastiche of the scene in Rocky 2, is it? Where he runs up the steps and all the kids follow him and it's like, yeah. And that scene evokes kind of a community spirit, optimism, a kind of a hope in the face of adversity and all this sort of stuff. In this scene, we get him running down the streets and it sort of plays the same music. It's like I say, it's obviously a deliberate takeoff on it. And then all these sort of street kids with these
that's the worst scene in
motorbikes,
the worst scene
dragging him around. And he's there and he's shouting, he throws his hat on the floor. It's aggressive, it's macho, it's dickhead.
Yeah, that's
and I just
dickhead,
think I don't like this person. I don't want him to win. He seems like a jock meathead dick. And that's the beauty of Rocky, is that he was a beautiful person and then everyone liked him.
The only reason I'm rooting for him by the end is because they put him up against a
dickhead,
like opponents that are
dickhead.
even more macho, horrible dickheads that I want to lose more than him. That's
but
pretty
I really felt like that little motorbike thing, which was just a weird thing. It was so out of place. The rest of it, like, he gets nervous before a fight. He's showing a bit of humanity and humility. He admits to needing a nervous shit. He cares about Rocky.
Yeah,
he cares enough about this girl. That was a nice, real little,
yeah.
And then the biggest problem was just that motorbike scene where he comes across like a dickhead. The rest of it, he's really normal.
Well, that's
and
it.
human.
No, I don't think so. But I admit that scene is sort of the epitome of it. But I think basically, if I met this guy, I wouldn't want to talk to him and sit down and chat with him. Whereas with Rocky, you could. And I think that's the difference. It's just not a likable.
I think if I met Rocky, right. So this is the difference. I think if I met either of them, I wouldn't want to talk to them or get to know them. But I think Rocky would come over to me and start a chat and work me to the point that I actually really warm to him and go, this is a really nice old guy. He's taken the time to have a chat and be friendly. And I'd leave thinking, what a nice guy.
I think the difference is that Rocky never goes in going, I want to fight, I want to fight, I want to fight. He goes in going, this is what I know, and it just happens to be fighting.
Yeah,
I think it's slightly different because it doesn't come across as aggressive.
That's it. But I think that is what we were talking about last week. That is the true essence and the reason why Rocky's character, this character of Rocky, was so popular at first and has lasted so long, and why these films have an appeal beyond people who like sports films or people who like boxing films. It's got a much more mainstream audience because that likable character at its centre, this hopeful, optimistic character, this simpleton who manages to have a skill and use it to its best abilities. That's the beauty of Rocky.
But
and
I feel
Creed
like
does not have that.
Well, not in the same way,
Creed.
but I think it's because they set up his character deliberately coming from a very different background. He's in juvie. He starts off really as a fighter, and then he learns humility and he learns to be personable. It's just different.
That's it. That's the bit that never happens. I don't think he ever learns. He never loses that street fighting kind of attitude. And if they hung it on that and made that part of the character, I could go with it. But they're not. They're trying to sell him as a nice guy.
But I'm glad that they haven't resolved his character arc in this film because they're clearly setting it up for Creed 2.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's deliberate decision because the franchise has got legs. They've done enough groundwork so that he's not just an arsehole, but he hasn't completed his arc yet. And I completely am on board with that.
I completely agree with you. I don't like the idea of telling an incomplete story in a film because you're banking on there being a sequel to do it properly. It just feels like he hasn't got a proper arc as a character.
The other side of that, the downside of that, is that we would then get films like Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 where he's doing the same arc over and over and over again because it's not a continuous thing. It's episodic. It's not, you know. I think that's the drawback, is that they could end up falling into the same mistakes.
Yeah, but I'd be happy if no film ever had a sequel. That would be fine for me.
Well, yeah, I mean that too. Yeah, that would be fine. But you know that in the world they're living in now, like the world we're living in now, just everything gets so dragged through a hedge that a sequel is inevitable because it's like, oh, this has a couple of legs, so, you know, let's really push it and make money from it. And
well, that was the other thing. We get introduced to this character, and Apollo's wife turns up. We kind of figure out it's Apollo's son, but then it's not quite clear immediately if it's like, was she pregnant and she had this kid and then abandoned it, like that? Because that was my first thought. Because she says in her little opening speech, she's like, "Oh, I kind of lost touch with I abandoned my family." She didn't quite use those words, but then we get the fight. It's like his side piece that he had going on, and so. But
hang on, is she meant to be the other woman, or is she meant to be the wife who's
now
taking in the son of
wife.
the other woman?
Yeah, exactly. That is what happens, and it does get explained later on, but it's not that. Clear at the beginning.
With the funeral. Yeah, I remember now.
Yeah, and so that's a weird way to take it, isn't it? Why not?
I don't know why not just say that it was like she was pregnant at the time, and it was like not many people knew.
It's because you need to get him
as the underdog, the outcast.
Yeah, he's not just a rich kid. Like he's had that time in the streets, and like you've got the whole story where he's. But then that's what sets up this whole thing about him. Oh, I don't want to go by my father's name. Oh, wait, I'm proud to be Apollo Creed son, and all this thing about the name and all that. And it's like. This man, you never met this man, he didn't raise you, you've got his genes, and so, yeah, you might have good boxing genes, but why you have any sort of pride in it? Like, if it was more about his mum, because she took him in when he was 10, and then she raised him and stuff like that.
You know what, as well, I feel like the character of his mum gets a real fucking short straw in this film. I think that is the most underused,
isn't she there at the fight?
She's got one scene at the start that sets her up as a major player in this film who should be a significant character and then pretty much forgotten about for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And I get the impression she's going to have a bigger role in the next one, although that's based on very little. I think she might be in the trailer. Yeah, I think it's a shame. I think that character was shortchanged. She should have been a much bigger part of it. Like Alan says, she should have been the kind of the drive for his, you know, pride, and yeah, it's just.
But I mean, the whole story with him not wanting to take the name, I actually didn't really have any issue with that because I can understand why he'd want to keep his mum's name.
I was happy with that.
Yeah.
Until he went, oh, okay, I'll be Creed.
Yeah, but he didn't do it willingly. He did it because he needed to take that fight. Like, you do see the tension there.
Yeah, but
and then as
he's
fighting, by the end he's fine with it. But the point is, it wasn't like a snap decision where suddenly he was. And that's the bit I respect, is like, it showed some form of journey, which is fine. That's all I wanted from it.
But if he'd gone, like, if he had a scene with his mother, who's not really his mother, whatever, and she says to him, "Oh no, you should take your dad's name. Be proud of it." And he says, "Like, no, I'm not taking my dad's name. I'm taking your name." And like that's how he justifies it to himself. Nice little moment, nice little emotional moment. She's on board. She can come to the fight and watch him and go, "Hey, if it's your choice, I respect your decision." All that would have been nice.
I don't know. I really saw it that like he didn't want to take Creed's name, and actually I think a big part of it had to do with the fact that he hadn't met Rocky and he needed to meet Rocky, like, because he'd done his research on who Rocky was and who his dad was. He knew what everyone else knew, but then he met Rocky Balboa and he learnt a different side of his dad, and I think that made him feel like he could have pride in him.
Yeah,
but that needed to happen, and that was legit. I think that's believable.
I think you're probably right. It didn't come across strong enough for me, or it didn't work quite well enough in that. I think that's what they were doing. Yeah, makes it all the more interesting that Rocky's parents are never acknowledged in any way. Like, they're never around. We can assume they're dead. But even in those first films, we never go, "Oh, you know, my mum brought me up like this," anything like that. You know, there's literally no reference to them at all. And I think that's interesting in a series of films that do going to
talk about family and
stuff
paternity.
so much,
yeah, so much. Yeah, I mean, we're obviously talking about the film and analysing it. I'm going to say now, I did really like Creed. I didn't think I would. I thought it was going to be really shit, and actually, it held my focus.
That's very surprising and weird.
Yeah.
Can I raise another point then? Another sort of big problem I had with the film. The girlfriend character, I could have done without that whole thing.
Yeah, I like that, except it doesn't go anywhere, and it's so clearly set up for the sequel. They're like, well, we'll deal with that in the sequel.
Yeah,
and I don't
like it.
It just feels like a loose end, and it is a shame, because I like Tessa Thompson. I think she gives a good performance here. I think there's a good chemistry between them. Like, I like it. I just want an arc there. I don't want this kind of...
I think it's deliberate to set him up again as not being a dickhead. He's the kind of person that isn't... He doesn't just, like, tap that and go, to use youth speak. It implies that he's a decent guy. That's the implication.
She's a musician, but she's losing her hearing. There's all these things set up that just don't really
they
go
feel they
anywhere,
must be set up.
And I assume they're just setups for future films, and I don't really like that about it. I must say, my favourite moment in the entire franchise is to do with them. Can you guess what it is? This is better than the robot in Rocky IV. Just.
He puts her over his shoulder.
No, so
no, I've got nothing.
So they finally start fucking. And the camera slowly pans up. And who do we see? It's Rocky's pet turtle just looking down at them like, yeah, boy.
Yeah. Well, that was a nice little memory of, hey, this is how Rocky and Adrian probably did it in front of these turtles. These turtles have seen a lot of sofa sex.
What was Ryan Coogler, director Ryan Coogler, what was he thinking that he thought, let's pan slowly up at this romantic moment to... a reaction shot of a turtle just
hang on. It's not like a reaction shot. The turtle didn't do like a double take.
It's looking at them. It is staring them down. It's like...
it's looking up. It's got its neck above water. No, it's not. The turtle was not like, oh...
It is. The tortoise is there.
No, it's not.
The tank's getting steamed up.
You want to see.
But their whole situation, like how they meet and their first date, and I just... None of it. I didn't care about any of it. All I was thinking is this really? How young people talk to each other?
I thought the date scene was really nice. I mean, again, it's very much a sort of callback, some symmetry to the original Rocky with him going out with Adrian.
Yeah, they did feel awkward together.
It's got a heavily, heavily improvised feel. That's something this film gets back to. It feels very much like the first film, where it feels very heavily improvised throughout. And I really like that about it.
But if it changed him anyway, our main character, that is his character journey we're following, so maybe by being with her, does it help him emotionally because he's got someone to talk to at last? No, we never get that.
She is his emotional net, and then there's the point when he actually needs her, and she isn't willing to be there for him because he's...
a dickhead.
I can't remember what it is at that point that's upset her, but he's done... Oh, he got in a fight with that guy.
He's punched the headliner of a...
Which he does as an emotional response to, fear and...
Yeah, but the point is that she's saying you can't be flippant. You can't be that Street Fighter that we're all going, oh, he's a bit of a dick.
And
she's saying the same thing as us.
That does put him to the lowest point imaginable, because not only is he, at rock bottom like he was at the start of the film, but now he's not even got her to look out for him as well. So I do think that's a nice motivating factor.
I think I'd be fine if
I
felt like he'd changed by the end. I don't. I think he's the same person at the end that he is at the beginning.
So, should we talk about Ryan Coogler, the director?
He likes Michael B. Jordan.
Well, yeah, that's his. A lot of directors like their,
It's his Robert De Niro, as they say.
Yeah, that's all right, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
I've spoken about how I think he brings a real sensibility of the first Rocky to the proceedings. I think it's a real vibe and feeling of very much a modern take on the franchise. This feels very modern and like a every bit a contemporary film, but it feels like the natural evolution of the franchise up until this point. It doesn't feel dated, yet it's got that very kind of character study feel of the first Rocky, that kind of very improvised feel. It gets back to a lot of what made that first film work, and I think for the most part the direction is pretty good. a big part of what makes this film work as well as it does. There's one little bit of direction I'd like to complain about.
Is it the first fight scene?
Yes, because up until this point in the franchise, I've always been really quite invested in the fights, and a big part of that is because, to me, as a boxing layman, they do come across as very real and
well put together.
And I'm often like really taken in by them. The first big fight in this film is like a one-take fancy bit of filmmaking, and it's like, as a bit of filmmaking, it's done very well. It's good, but it's so blatantly obvious that this is like the most intricately choreographed bit of like practically dancing that we're watching, and the characters kind of stepping out of the way of the camera and hitting their marks, and it makes the whole thing feel completely artificial and not raw, not real in the way that the boxing's always felt to me in these films. And the feeling that's trying to be conveyed isn't there as a result of it, because it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I think I said basically exactly the same thing. I think it's one of those things where they've got, this will be great. It's like you're in the fight, you're part of the action. It seems like a good idea on paper.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work within the context of the rest of the film or the rest of the franchise. It feels so choreographed that it feels fake.
Before I saw this film, I was expecting a lot less of Rocky, frankly. I was kind of given the impression that it was very much a passing of the torch film, and he was very much a small supporting role. But no, he's the second biggest part in the film. He's a substantial part of it, and
I also like that he is still the main reason. He without him and without his character, the kind of new protagonist, the new story wouldn't exist. You are still so dependent on Rocky's character.
It's completely born out of Rocky film lore, completely,
Yeah, and so the next one, I feel like maybe the next one will be even more of a passing of the torch. It's like I appreciate that they're doing it as a more gradual process.
Maybe. I don't know, I'm almost... It almost seems like it might go the other way based on what they're doing, but before we get to that, so this film, Rocky obviously trains up, what's he called?
Adonis Johnson.
And,
Don Johnson.
Donnie.
And, it culminates in a big fight, and as they always do. So he goes up against a Scouse guy. How jarring is it to hear an authentic Liverpudlian accent in a Hollywood film? It is
that authentic?
So weird. Yeah, it's a real Scouser.
Oh, I thought it was a shit Liverpudlian accent, but then again, I don't know accents.
I mean, I might be wrong. I think he's a real boxer.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And that's
all the opponents in this film are real boxers. Tony Bellew plays the Scouser. He was like Tony Bellew was not just a boxer; he was a high-profile champion boxer. He was a big name. But yeah, they've got him in as the opponent. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but Sylvester Stallone is an Everton fan, and I don't know why. But at some point, he must have been over in England, and he's been to the Goodison Park like a few times. It's one of those weird sort of celebrity facts. So Tony Bellew is also he's a Liverpudlian, he's an Everton fan. So I don't know if that's why he picked him and decided to use him for this thing, but yeah, there's definitely some sort of connection there. And they filmed in Liverpool. They filmed at Everton's football ground.
So kind of getting back onto a similar vibe to last week's episode where I was discussing who would win in a fight out of me and you, Alan. So in this film, Michael B. Jordan's there, Adonis Creed Johnson, whatever he's called. Now he gets his top off, and it's like he's ripped. It's like this Hollywood action movie, Hugh Jackman guy, bulbous muscles, glistening. It's like, that's a muscly man, right?
Okay.
Then his opponent,
and then there's
whatever he's called, comes in.
No definition at all.
His top off. That's what I look like with my top off. So what's that about?
You're doing all right then, aren't you?
That's what I look like.
Well,
I'm
actually,
not defined.
I thought that really...
So my understanding is that you don't really need to be that in shape to be a good boxer, as long as your arms are muscular and.
Well, you build for strength, not for show.
So what's going on? Is this So is that what it is? It's not that the Hollywood's just lied to us and built up an unrealistic body image that we should all aspire to.
I think your protagonists, like, you know, Adonis and Sylvester Stallone, like their characters have to show that they're getting ripped, because that's what is also aesthetically like what the audience kind of want.
Well, that's what the
I think that's why their characters are doing it.
That's what the training montage is for. If they go through all that training montage and they don't come out the other side like really, really in shape, it's like, well, what's the point in that then?
I did, you know what I really liked actually was that Catch the Chicken came back.
Because I've got some vague muscles going on in my arms, but I've got like a flabby soup tin chest, so I reckon I'd win, Alan. That's
soup tin?
Like a can
Tomato
of soup.
Can.
Yeah. I reckon I'd win.
Well,
Alan,
I mean, you can. I mean, I'm going to put it on the thing for this week's episode. I'm going to see if anybody there can get us some.
Oh, I thought you meant you were going to put photos of you shirtless, both of you, and compare. I was like, I mean, I'll like that and share it.
I'm going to say, if anybody has a boxing gym, we don't want any training. We just want to put pads on and hit each other and see what happens. Because I think that'll be better than us training. Just give us the gloves and the helmet, and we'll just
and the mouth guard.
Yeah.
And the crotch. Go for a crotch guard as well.
I'm not going to punch Alan in the dick.
By the way, have you ever seen boxers, right? Because you're not allowed to hit below the belt. So now they have their shorts, and then the waistband of the belt is like 8 inches wide, and it comes up over their belly button, so that they can't get punched too low. It's pathetic. It's so childish. Anyway, what about Burt Young? He's dead. Well, no, Burt Young isn't dead, but Paulie is. Paulie's dead.
Oh, Paul! Yeah, what
cut
the
dead
fuck?
weight. Just get rid of it.
It was
Burt Young
literally
is still
the
very
beginning...
much alive and working.
Oh,
How is he feeling about that?
They realised 7 films in that the character's a douche. Took them fucking long enough.
Which is a shame, because this is when he could really come into his own of just being like an annoying old man in the corner.
That's what he's been for the last 6 films.
All of the others, the rest of the series is like the death happens and it motivates him somehow. And these were just like, oh, no one's looking. Let's just bung a death in there and get him out the way. I mean, these two felt a little bit cheap when it came to that, you know.
People die. I mean, it's not always.
Yeah,
it's not always.
I mean, there has to be a reason why Paulie's been hanging around them for that long. Like, although he's so annoying, Rocky's put up with him and tolerated him. Yeah, because he's his best mate. Was there any emotional fallout after his death?
Probably.
Nope.
Probably loads of it.
None. None at all. There was that one reference where he goes and puts alcohol on his grave, goes and reads the paper in front of his dead wife.
Well, yeah, that's at least months, if not years, after he's died. Isn't
yeah, but then there's no other reference to Paulie being dead.
Yeah, because why would he keep bringing it up?
Because he's been hanging around him like a bad smell for 25 years or whatever the fuck.
Look, when Alan dies in a couple of years' time, I'm not going to be going on about him every time I meet new people. Like, oh, I had this mate who died.
When Sol dies in my arms in the ring after I punched him, I'll have to have a little moment every now and then.
But the point is, you haven't gone through hell with Alan. He hasn't been hanging around you for as long as he had. You didn't buy him a robot. I mean, that is love.
I mean, I as good as bought him a robot. I bought a watermelon and cut a face in it and put it in his bed. I'm not a millionaire. I'm sorry, Judy, you know.
I'm wasting my time then. What am I doing?
When he is, though, he'll be buying some robots.
I'll be buying Robo Sapiens left, right, and centre.
So the other thing we haven't really talked about in detail is that Rocky gets the big C in this film. Decides he's happy to die in the moment.
I think this film needed Rocky to be alone. I think it needed Paulie to be dead, and it needed Adrian to be dead, because his one lifeline is this new kid that he's befriended, and it's kind of about him learning to...
Well, he's forced to face his own mortality, and I liked that. Because it really worked as like an aging story.
And his decision to actually try and fight it, I think, is handled really nicely as a parallel. I mean, it's not subtle, but as a parallel to the kid, you know... He's helping me fight some things as well. You know, that whatever it is he says, it's nice. It works. I am convinced there's a draft of the film where he dies. I'm sure that was.
I imagine there must.
I'm sure that was thrown around at some point, but
I felt that about Rocky Balboa as well, though. That
Absolutely.
If he died at the end, it would have been fine. It would have been
absolutely. I'm sure there was a draft of that where he died. I'm sure. Oh, well, we know there was a draft of Rocky V where he died. So, yeah, and I'm glad he doesn't. To be honest, I'm glad he makes it through the film because I think it would have almost been a bit cheap if he had died. It would have been too obvious. It would have just been what you expect.
Yeah.
It would have been too much of a blatant passing the
torch,
done
for the emotional
death to motivate. Yeah. I think it's a lot better and more nuanced and more powerful that he decides to fight it, and the two of them get to, live on to the next one.
And Mickey didn't die until Rocky 3, so... I did like one bit I liked in the fight scene, the end fight scene, was when the kid's eye was like really busted up. And the doctor's like, oh, how many fingers am I holding up? And the cut man like taps his back of his neck to tell us.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, you never see who that guy is meant to be, because I was like, is it Rocky? And then you realise it's not Rocky.
No, it's the cut man. It's the guy who's like patching up his face and stuff. It's just one of his corner team. But I like that because the guy who's doing that is a real cut man. He's quite a famous guy in the boxing world. And... like that, I bet that is something that happens. I bet that's just like one of those little inside boxing tricks, Probably not on that level because it's a bit too obvious. But maybe 30 years ago when it was all a bit dirtier and like.
Yeah.
But I like that. It seemed like a nice little touch. But I always that guy's eye is closed. Like the doctor doesn't need to see if he can see. It's obvious.
No.
Like if he was a little bit closed, he could get away with it.
Yeah. I mean, he does sort of go, well, all right, and like he obviously knows it's bullshit, but he's kind of he can go, hey, look, I did the test when there's like
when he has brain damage.
Yeah.
It's all right. That's curable nowadays. He's fine.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Anyway, ratings
8.
Okay, I would give it a 6.
I think it's.
He went for 7. He went for a fucking 7, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it's by far the best Rocky sequel. I give it a 7. I think it's.
I do think it's the best Rocky sequel as well. Actually.
Well, if you gave it an 8, you think it's the best Rocky altogether.
Well, yeah, that too. No, I mean, I like it as a sequel. I think it did really well. The only reason I gave it higher than the first one, obviously, you need the first one in order to set up this one. I do appreciate that, but at the same time, just there was something I didn't take to Rocky's character in the first one. It was a massive flaw for me because.
Well, I think I had the exact same thing, but the other way around. Then I just didn't take to Creed. I didn't take to Adonis. Have you guys seen the trailer for Creed 2?
Yeah,
I deliberately didn't watch it.
It looks quite dark.
I mean,
based on the trailer, it looks like
nothing about the trailer really did anything to. I thought it was very bland as a trailer, but I've seen what. I mean, essentially, the plot is it's the son of Ivan Drago who nearly killed Rocky and killed his dad. Obviously, the real Creed.
But this really, I mean, the concept, I did see the concept, which felt very cheap. It's now just into second generation of everything.
Well, that's it. On one hand, it makes a lot of sense, and I'm kind of interested in it. Then on the other hand, it's like, really, we are just full-blown doing Rocky the Next Generation.
Yeah.
But then it is the guy who killed his dad. So there is that, like, personal
connection.
That's
true. Okay, yeah, good point. I was just thinking, why not Clubber Lang's kid? But that makes sense now.
I'm torn about it. I don't really know how to feel. I mean, I'm kind of on board purely for the sake of nostalgia and the fact that I love Rocky 4, even though it's dreadful. So I'm hoping that, like, the son of the robot comes back and we just, like, do this properly. I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, you should find out that Paulie had, like, an illegitimate kid
with the robot,
and then get them fighting.
Played by Jack Black.
Oh my god, yeah. Oh, terrifying. Jack Black's looking old now, man.
Yeah,
scary.
His hair, we all right.
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of it. I think reviews are already out for this one. I think they basically all say it's good, but not as good as Creed. It's like Rocky 2 to Creed 2.
Yeah. This is a big...
Oh, and apparently it plays massively off of nostalgia. It's not less capable of standing on its own feet.
Yeah, but all of Rocky, all of the series didn't it? It played upon the film before, and it was
apparently
like,
this
made
one
you resent that you've taken a chance on
less capable of standing on its own feet than Creed was.
I can imagine that. I think that's fair enough. But even for me, bearing in mind what a struggle it was for me to get through the kind of the first bit of leg of the series, I actually would not be opposed to watching this sequel, which is big for me. So
You can come back for our review of the year then, because you can go and watch it.
We're gonna have to film the Mamma Mia review of the year as well.
Have you seen that yet? Have you watched Mamma Mia 2?
No, because I wanted to see it with my mum, and then she blew me off. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't find anyone to see Mamma Mia 2 with.
What a sad indictment of our society, eh?
I know. And I tried to take her to see Bohemian Rhapsody the other day, but she wouldn't go and see it because the film was on after 7 p.m.
It's quite a long film, though, to be fair. I wouldn't bother, though. If you're going to go see something, that's not the one I'd choose.
Well, it's only that she's a massive Queen fan, and, I wanted to see it as well, so it made sense.
Your mum is probably the perfect demographic for that, because it's like the Freddie Mercury story, but PG.
Yeah, they're not going into any of the gay stuff in any real detail. Got very bad reviews, but people seem to be lapping it up. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I heard, it's one of those things again where all the people you don't respect their opinions, they're all the ones raving about it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Same goes for, Greatest Showman. I haven't seen it, but all the people whose opinions I don't respect were loving it. So
yeah, I've had the exact same thing with Greatest Showman. I've still not seen it, but people keep going, you love musicals, you should watch it. And I'm like, yeah, but I like good musicals.
But have you seen Bohemian Rhapsody, though?
No, to be honest, I could believe it's all right. I have someone was telling.
It's not good.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, it's not good. It's not. I mean, there's some nice songs in it, and there's some bits. The story is engaging enough, but it's really trite. It's really every scene. Every scene is like
hero worship.
He just sort of he's angry and he bangs on the table and it goes.
No!
Wait a minute!
No!
That sounds good.
Jesus!
That doesn't actually happen. That doesn't literally happen. But it's all very similar stuff to that. It's like something happens that that makes me think of a song.
In their lap.
Oh, look at that girl with a fat bottom. I'm gonna.
Oh, I'm sick of this. I need to break free.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to break free.
It does feel very much like if The Simpsons did the story of Freddie Mercury, as a joke. But yeah, it's very like that. Plus, it's all very sanitized in the sense of there's just not as much cock and cocaine as I imagined there probably was.
Who plays Dick Valentine of Electric Six when they cover Radio Gaga several decades later
enough,
over the end credits?
Funnily enough, the world can do without Electric Six.
Really?
Well, it's just one of those things, right? There's probably a really good Freddie Mercury film that could be made if Brian May and Roger Taylor just fuck off and start.
Oh god, yeah. I think that's the one Sacha Baron Cohen signed on to make before dropping out of the creative differences when it became apparent that they were going to really fucking sanitize and make
because they don't want to tarnish that Queen legend or whatever. Well, I don't know why, because that's the rock star lifestyle is what everyone likes. They want to see the drugs and the mess.
Brian
May and Roger Taylor are the ones who
see that
deal with
story
it.
behind it. So.
But you can't do it without their music, so you've got no choice. You've got to work with them or not do it.
Are we kind of wrapping up?
Have we rated Creed? We have, haven't we? Oh, we're talking about Creed 2. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of it. I can't see it being great. I could see it being good, crowd pleasy fun, like a lot of the other Rocky films are, without being.
I'm kind of curious where they're going to take it, but yeah, I don't imagine it will, like you say, stand up in the same way that Creed does.
Well, the franchise mentality is such that they're already writing in the next film that this young Creed has a kid, so that in 20 years they can do the next generation. They're already thinking that far ahead.
Oh my god!
Although it'll only be about 14 years, and they'll just sort of fake the dates and get someone else in.
Yeah.
Although it's probably a girl, and it's it's all about girl boxing.
Ooh.
So that'll be really hot.
That's good. Yeah, I like that. Should we make that our pitch?
Well,
just beat them to it.
Well,
Rocket.
I mean, $1 Million Baby is the famous female boxing film.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
I mean, it's the emotional driver is not really the boxing,
but if they did that as Girl Rocky, I think there would be claims of sexism.
Rocket.
If they do 7
I've
films
already said Rocket. Get your own joke.
Oh, sorry.
If they did 7 films, 8 films of male Rockies having a fight and going the distance and winning, and then the first female Rocky dies in the ring.
I'll tell you what I'd like to do with Rocky, right? Because, Rocky is essentially, he's still a celebrity, he's still a persona in this story world. So I want to see Rocky on the dancing show, or
Strictly
Rocky
Come
on
Dancing.
In the jungle, or basically just Rocky in doing the celebrity lifestyle.
That's the logical extension of Rocky 2, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, that low level celebrity life.
Yeah.
Like Nigel Benn was on one of the dancing shows, and he was a boxer.
Yeah, Sylvester Stallone's mum was on Big Brother, so...
Yeah. Do you think that would work?
I mean, it would have no real story to that.
No, because he has to dance every week, and he has to learn a new dance, and...
Well, he's trained by a young... It's like a reverse... It's Rocky going back to the first film, but his trainer's like a young, sassy,
Russian. She's Russian.
Yeah.
She's a Russian dancer, and she's like trying to teach him the tango or whatever they do.
I don't know. I think it's really tough because not only have they done the same sort of thing again and again and again, they've also hit a lot of the joke ideas. Like, it's about Rocky's kid getting bullied at school and he has to train up and smack the bully. They've done that as a real Rocky film.
Well, imagine Rocky dressed as a minion, dancing to Pharrell Williams.
Oh my god!
I mean, what about? Can we do something with Marvel? Stallone's in Guardians of the Galaxy. Michael B. Jordan's the bad guy in Black Panther. He died, but Tessa Thompson's in Thor. No,
well, I don't know how you bring them together. To be honest, but...
just spitballing. Russia. Can we? Well, so tensions with Russia have kind of kicked off again in the real world between America and Russia. Do you think that's going to play into this new film?
No.
I think they're going to completely...
It's not going to be political at all. It is pure blockbuster moneymaker.
So,
that's what it is.
Should we have a film where it is, and Creed gives a big speech about learning...
He goes to North Korea to fight.
Hey, going back to Marvel, Rocky Raccoon.
Again, we're back to Rocket.
Rocky Road.
Rocky Road. I think Rocky should go back to doing commercials. I think that was an idea that never quite got off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I'd enjoy more of that. The only thing is it would feel kind of like, we're doing Rocky 2. We're doing more of that, are we? Okay.
So where can we go with this that is new? That's not Rocky in space?
What do real old boxers do in real life, Alan? You know more about this stuff than me.
Strictly Come Dancing.
What do they
die?
Oh, I shouldn't laugh. That was quite a belly laugh for that comment. Especially the ones with cancer, right?
I mean, I'd say we could get a really nice film with Rocky facing his mortality, but that was the last film, That's kind of...
Yeah.
What's left for Rocky? What's left? Because I'm not interested in Creed, so what's left for Rocky?
I'm trying to think
No, don't try and take it back to Rocky. That's done.
What fights have they got left in him? They've done Street Brawl, they've done...
Okay, I know what we've got to do. There's only one thing left to do, isn't there? Rocky dies, and then he goes to hell and has to fight the devil.
Played by Jack Black again,
Or, death comes for him and he was like, you play chess against death to save your life. Well, he challenges
Rocky
him to a boxing.
I know what happens. Rocky is like walking home through the bad streets of Philly or something, right? Mm-hmm. And he a mugger comes at him, and he gets in a fight. He stands up for it's like in a public place so people can see, and he's
just collected his pension.
Yeah. And he like tries to be like, hey, we don't want no trouble here, and
this is a local shop for local people. We'll have no trouble here.
And he gets in a fight and like hands this guy's ass to him, right? And it goes viral. Someone filmed it on the phone. And it's like, pensioner, probably in Nam.
It's the Rocky Rambo crossover.
Yeah. He defended himself. People love it. That's happened. That happens all the time.
The person who tries to mug him, he beats him up as a black guy. And then like when he's on the news, he's like going, oh yeah, well, since the blacks came to this neighborhood, it's downhill. and then it becomes viral again.
It's that thing on the internet where there's two waves. There's the building them up wave, and then the wave where we realise they're problematic and take them down again.
Yeah, and then you can just have it. And then the last half an hour is just a series of memes of him, like the CCTV footage of him punching someone, but there's like Smash Mouth over the top of it.
And then
why do you indulge him?
And then Rocky goes, well, I thought we were having steamed hams.
Alan, you're bringing this upon yourself.
Oh, man. That must already maybe on YouTube. Rocky steamed hams crossover. And then I think the ending is Rocky gets like drawn back into the ring one last time to have an exhibition match with Grumpy Cat.
You laughed too hard at that. That was not warranted. Good lord.
Like Internet All-Stars.
Oh no!
Steamed clam, melting water, steamed ham, despite your ravages. Steamed clam, super color. Steamed ham, I hope you're prepared for steamed ham. Gods, my protein roll. Steamed clam, I hope you purchase fast food. Steamed ham, disgusted as much steamed clam,
Delightfully double-edged steamed board.
There you go, that was more Rocky. As ever, I hope you enjoyed listening. Please, as ever, go and rate and review us on the old iTunes. Like us on Facebook, Twitter, you know the drill. You can find links to everything we do on our website, dimreturns.com. And we'll be back next week, as usual. See you then. Bye.
I thought bring steamed clams.
Don't know why it's 16, man. Let's look like hamburgers.
You got hamburger steamed clams.
It's a refrigerator bottle tonight.
I have a region.
Upstate New York.
Really? Well, I'm from Utica, and I've never heard anyone use the phrase steamed hams.
Oh, not in Utica, no. It's an Albany expression.
You know, these hamburgers are quite similar to the ones they have at Krusty Burger.
It's an old family recipe. Oh, no.